6th installment, and last time we were talking about Nichi Kunitoshi and Rai Kunitoshi, and about if there were two smiths or just one smith. And just to repeat from last time, currently most scholars are of the opinion that it was just one smith who just changed his style and just decided to add the character Rai at some point in time. So today we still stay with Rai Kunitoshi and close his chapter by talking about his tanto. Rai Kunitoshi's tanto is the topic for today, but before we're gonna go into blades, I wanna go back a little bit to the history. So in the part about Rai Kuniyuki, the founder of the Rai school, I've introduced like one small wakizashi or large tanto. There's not that much exists by these early makers, and the same with the Awataguchi school. It takes a while till tanto show up, and you may ask yourself why was this the case? If you look here at the formal etiquettes, the formal costumes of the Heian period, you can see here the aristocrats, the warriors in their full-fledged court costumes and for official occasions. And if you go to the Kamakura period, the same thing, you will see a difference. If you can spot the difference in the Kamakura period, that's the Heian period, suddenly you have tanto be worn with your formal or informal wear. That's why tanto increase from the mid-Kamakura period onwards. That's why they were produced in larger numbers. And by the time Rai Kunitoshi shows up, late Kamakura, the tanto production was like in full bloom. Also, like early Kamakura, you still have portraits of warrior being shown without any tanto at all. It just all takes off mid to late Kamakura with the tanto production. So I just got to show you again this one tanto we had by Rai Kuniyuki. It's very flamboyant, it's a midareba, and it's the same with the Awataguchi school. The guys started with a wild choji and then started to go back to Sukuha after a while, and we see the same with the Rai school. Here you see midareba, large white tanto, early to mid Kamakura, and this is the only tanto, the next slide I'm going to show, that's the only tanto that's signed Kunitoshi by the Nichimei. So Rai Kunitoshi, we have like hundreds of tanto that are signed Rai Kunitoshi, but that's the only tanto that's just signed Kunitoshi Nichimei. And that's the famous Chuyu Punkasai Aisen Kunitoshi. And the nickname of the blade goes back to the fact that it has this engraving of the deity Aisen Myo on the tang. I just want to go back one more time. As you can see here too, Nichi Kunitoshi, so the early phase of Rai Kunitoshi, very flamboyant. And in his Rai Kunitoshi phase, he's going back to Sukuha, as we're gonna see shortly. So that's the origins of the nickname, this nice little engraving on the tang, and that's the deity Aisen Myo on the lotus seat as it is engraved on the tang. So that's the famous Chuyu Bunkasai by Nichi Kunitoshi. So let's start with the Sugata and the Tsukurikomi, meaning the shape and the interpretation of what blade it is. So Rai Kunitoshi, as I just mentioned, due to the increasing demand of new tanto, he was making all sorts of shapes and lengths. So he was making some from very small to very large tanto and in different shapes, which I'm going to introduce now, the most representative ones. So he, as you can see, very small. That's one of the smallest one, 19.6 centimeters, 7 3/4 of an inch. A very traditional, a very classical small blade. And the interesting thing is he made small blades, both with the furisode, with the curved nakago, and he made small blades with the straight nakago. So it's always two in each size, small with curved nakago, small with straight, medium size with curved and straight, and large with curved and straight. And I'm going to show you in a second. And here too, we have a medium-sized 24.4 centimeters, 9.5 inches, which is the standard length for a tanto, and we can have a look later. We have one here brought today by James, which is the same, about same size and the same style of the tang. So again, medium-sized tanto, curved tang, and about the same length and a straight tang. So the curved tang goes back to a different style of mounting. So we're not going to deal too much today about with it, but it's a mounting style and the preference for the curved Nakago. And then he also made the large tanto. This is one of his, if not the longest tanto by Rai Kunitoshi. There's one more that is a little bit longer, but it's Mume. It's attributed to Rai Kunitoshi. And all tanto I'm going to show today, they're all, with one exception, they're all signed. So I want to try to focus on the signed ones that we can be sure that's by him. Here you can see one of the largest tanto of Rai Kunitoshi. It's dated, and it also has the slightly curved tang still. And another large tanto by him, also almost 29 centimeters with the straight tang. So this was just the lengthwise, from small, medium to large size. He produced everything, and he also produced different shapes, tsukuri kome. So Rai Kunitoshi made something in kanmuri otoshi. You see with the sharpened tip part, that's Tokubetsu Chuyo. It's also on the larger side, it's dated. And that you can see the shape a little better, I'm gonna have a photograph of the blade itself. So Rai Kunitoshi also produced kanmuri otoshi, not just Hirotsikuri tanto. And he also produced tanto in Shobutsukuri. This one is not signed, but it has an early Honame attribution to Rai Kunitoshi, so it's pretty much solid that it's his work. So he also made Shobutsukuri. As you know, there's no yokote, where the shinogi like runs into the kisaki. So he was very versatile, because just the times he was working in, he was producing a lot of different tantos for a lot of different people. And now from the shape, we're gonna go over to his chigane and to his hamon. We've talked about the chigane a little bit with the long swords, raihad and everything. So what's important with Rai Kunitoshi's tanto, the same, very dense koitame. There is some raihad sometimes. Oops, I'm very sorry about that. No idea where I did that. It's the Nie Utsuri. It's very difficult to find decent pictures about the Nie Utsuri, but I found a few and I want to show them. So this is also a Chuyu tanto Rai Kunitoshi signed. It's about standard length. You can't see much here about the Nie Utsuri, but I was playing around a little bit with the contrast. And you can see here, you have to look parallel to the hamon. It's relatively close to the hamon. That's shaped by the Nie Utsuri. And I'm gonna show one more picture where you can see it a little better in the slanting one. If you see here along the hamon, that's the Nie Utsuri. That's very typical for Rai Kunitoshi and for the early Rai Smiths. So, and next with the chigane, we're gonna go over to the hamon, and the vast majority of all Rai Kunitoshi tanto, they are suguha, like 90% or 95% are suguha, and in different sizes. So I want to show here very typical suguha and very classical, very tiny small hataraki inside the ha. I'm going to show you another example here. Also in suguha, medium size, a little bit on the narrow side. And here you have to see all the activities are in the ha. You can see the sunagashi and kensuchi. You don't see the activities like with the long swords, which are like choji and things like that. It's more like in the ha, more like parallel to the cutting edge, kinsuchi and sunagashi. And also what's important when you look at these two tanto I just have shown you, like this, look at the boshi. And here too, you can see a little bit of nichuba in the boshi. That's also very typical for Rai Kunitoshi. And I'm gonna show you here in comparison. All this little nichuba, very typical for Rai Kunitoshi. And also if you look at the shape of the boshi itself, I'm gonna mark it in red. It looks like a very steep mountain peak, and Tanobe Sensei called this Mount Fuji boshi. So if you have boshi that is very wide on both sides, cutting edge and the mune, That's typical for right kunitoshi, and it's also present on the tanto that's on the table over here. It's disconnecting again. So, right kunitoshi. I want to show you his few more suguha interpretations. So he can go from very tiny suguha. Also, again, look at the boshi. It's wide compared to the rest of the hamon. It widens, and this is almost like if you want to accentuate the boshi. The hamon is very narrow, and then you're gonna put a wide boshi on there. So if you see that suguha hamon and a wide boshi with a peak, it's very typical for right kunitoshi.
Markus, sorry.
Yeah. So once again, narrow hamon but a wide boshi. That's typical for right kunitoshi. And then I'm just going to show you his suguha variants. Everything from suguha, like very narrow suguha, to medium size, to a little bit wider. So that's one on the narrow side. You have to be careful though to see if the suguha is narrow because it has lost material, or if it's just narrow by design. This is one narrow by design because the hamachi is still there. But if you see like the blade, typically, the curve, when it lost a lot of material, the suguha can be narrow too. So, next slide, that's one of his more wide suguha. So that's as wide as it gets. Don't expect a hero suguha on a tanto by right kunitoshi, but this is about as wide as it gets. That's the national treasure blade that also has the nichuba and the boshi. And he also made a very few tanto in midare-ba, but they are very limited. So there's the famous one, the Chuyo Bichutsuhin, which is dated in midare-ba, as you can see here. There's another one, a Chuyo in midare-ba, and there is another Chuyo in midare-ba. Just to show you the very few examples, but there are like, those midare-ba examples, they are like less than 1,000. So just because I'm able to show you few, I'm just going to show you more today, but because I don't show you the 300 in suguha. And there's also a little bit of midare. He also made the hamon that's a little bit frayed, that you can also see sometimes by the early Soshu guys like Shintogo Kunimitsu and Yukimitsu. And then he had some, right kunitoshi also had some weird, which I call odd hamon. There are two blades, two tanto by right kunitoshi, which have this odd hamon, which starts wide and then drops towards the monouchi. This one is dated, and there's another one that is like almost the same size, which has the same style of hamon. It starts wide and then drops. There's only two I'm aware of that exist, but he did make this style too. And we can speculate about the reason. There's no practical reason. There's no aesthetic reasons, but right kunitoshi made this style as well, which is a very rare odd suguha. And for the next part, I want to focus on right kunitoshi's horomono in tanto. So what he did which was very common for him, was to combine horomono of like the grooves and then an additional horomono below it on both sides. That is also very typical for him. And so you can see it a little bit in right kunimitsu too, but it's typical for right kunitoshi. That's again, there's the national treasure that has the two parts of horomono combined. And that's the long blades that are also katana-hi and grooves below. And this one is interesting. I just want to tell you a little anecdote. I saw this blade. It's this Tokubetsu Chuyo at a kante in northern Japan once. It's like there was a tanto kante, and because the blade has the nichuba towards the tip and the horomono, the groove is very narrow to the mune, I was beating on Awataguchi Kuniyoshi, but it's actually the right kunitoshi. So I was off. I was in the correct tradition, but I was a little early and I was off. So that was the famous tanto kante. So whenever you're gonna go somewhere to the rural ones, you have to sit on the floor. That's how it is. So prepare your knees. And That's another one what I wanted to show. He did make tanto with katana here that are very close to the mune, like the Awataguchi school did, but also someone where it's not as close to the mune. And it's very subtle actually. I'm gonna pull up a new slide where you put it next to each other. It's not that obvious, but if you put a line in there, you can see the distance of the he to the mune, and you can also focus on this area where it runs into the tang. So if it's narrow or if it's wide. And then he also, Raikunidoshi also made some, some milk toast run of the mill horimono, just bonji with suken, which we see on all the other makers too. Bonji and suken. Grooves with bonji, as you can see here, or just the bonji alone. But the combination of a groove and a horimono below, that's typical for Raikunidoshi, that's very unique for him. Also just some gomabashi and another hi on another side, that's also what he did. And there's another one with standard horimono. So I just wanted to show you this many options to give you an idea about how varied his style was. And there exists one blade, which is rare. It has the relief of a suken in the groove, but it's extremely rare for Raikunidoshi. So don't expect any fancy horimono or any dragons of this, or any reliefs in grooves. Just classical horimono or two classical horimono combined. So not that fancy with Raikunidoshi. So with that, I wanted to close for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
How was his signature? On some of the nakagos, it takes like the whole freaking nakago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on some other nakagos, it's just, it's to the side. It's not really in the center. So was he changing his signature throughout the years? He was making the blades, or was consistent?
No, it's not consistent. The signature size and position changes a little bit.
Yeah.
But there's not really a chronology, so you're going back and forth.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Shobu Tsukuri that you showed, to me it looked like Moroha Tsukuri, which to my reading came out in the late 1400s, early 1500s.
Right.
Am I wrong? They look almost exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go back to this slide. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, so the difference is Shobu Tsukuri, you see where the shinogi ends a little bit before the tip. The Moroha Tsukuri, it runs right into the tip. So that's the difference.
I'm sitting too far away.
Yeah. No.
Markus, would you be expecting to see Raihada on Tanto as well?
Tanto is not that prominent as with blades. You would see sometimes a Chifu Utsuri, it looks like a Neo Utsuri, but it not goes over the entire blade. Let's go back to where I was showing the Utsuri. So like here. So if you just see this spot over here, there would be a Chifu Utsuri, but Raihada is not that common for Tanto.
What's the sort of maximum Moto Gasane that you see on Tanto from this time period? Do they get 7mm, 8mm thick, or they tend to be a bit thinner?
There are some thick ones that tend to Yoroidoshi, and that's also a good point, because if they are too thin, they are probably not Kamakura. So you do see standard and slightly wider Kasane, which, as when it's too thin, it's probably Nambokshu already. You had a question?
Yeah, more generally, so the transition, excuse me, from Heian into Kamakura with the Tanto becomes, part of the fashion. Is there more that can be said there with the development in terms of the penetrate armor that made the Tanto more popular, or was it just purely a fashion trend that we...
I think it was to a large part a status symbol for the warrior to wear a Tanto at all times, to wear it to the civil attire and to the official dresses. And they have the early forms of Mito, Koromono, and Tanto and things like that. It was a status symbol. Because before it was mostly like consumer goods. You're gonna have a dagger and you're gonna be polished down and resharpened for the battlefield, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how that would then become a status symbol.
Yeah.
So, Markus,
Mhm.
a question. So how would you compare a tanto in Kamakura to the regular kitchen knife, utility knife they would use every day, like a normal kitchen knife to
Yeah.
cut stuff? I mean, it would be different in shape,
Mhm.
smaller, or what would it look like compared
People-
to tantos?
People probably look the same, but the problem is they are all lost, so we don't know. We don't have that many around. We have some mountings left, which just suggest that the shape was the same, but somewhere just not as high quality.
I'm asking because they were so small that they're almost like like a regular kitchen knives,
Mhm.
in size. That they were almost like a utility everyday use stick as well.
Yeah, the shape and size would be the same. There would just be lower quality.
Yeah,
than the
obviously
status
the
symbol.
quality would be
Yeah.
different here because it would be just like a mass thing,
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
Well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.